Hello, good evening, everybody, or good morning, wherever you are. Welcome back to another very, very powerful Power BI Wednesday. My name is Erika, and I am the Program Manager at Microsoft Reactor Stockholm. Today, we are going to continue with the 10th episode of the very popular Power BI series around the world of Power BI in 80 days, a journey through the data platform. This series has been giving you a 360 overview of how to use the Power BI platform to build impactful reports. Throughout these hands-on workshops, you have been able to discover how to transform and visualize your data and go from 0 to hero just in 12 days. During September, we had beginner content, and then we moved on to intermediate content. And November, it's advanced. So today we are kicking off with the second episode of the advanced content. But before we continue, I would just like to say a quick few words about Microsoft's Code of Conduct. We all come from different backgrounds, so let's just be very aware of each other, be friendly and patient, welcoming and respectful. After all, we are all here to learn. Thank you. I would like to ask you to please check in via the link above, which I will also drop in the chat in a minute. And please use the event ID 148110. Thank you. But now I would like to move on to the reason we are here today. And this is our host, Parvinder Chana. Parvinder is a very result-driven data analytics and BI expert, a Microsoft MVP in data platform as well. And he has over 15 years of relevant experiences and a solid track record of implementing company-wide BI solutions and managing all phases of BI. In today's session, he will be sharing his top 20 tips and learnings that he always does when he starts a new project. And he will be telling you what has helped him in providing scalable Power BI solutions to many, many happy customers. I think I have spoken enough. So let's welcome you, Parvinder, to this stage. Back again, actually, for the second time. So thank you so much for being here with us today. Let's just stop and get back to here. Yes. I stopped sharing. Yes. Things falling on me. So yeah, thank you so much for being back here today. Hello.
Hello. Thanks, Erika. Nice to be back here. Awesome.
Yeah, so today is going to run for about 45 minutes with some questions at the end. I will switch off my camera and mute myself, so you're in spotlight, but I will be at the background if I am needed. Okay?
Beautiful.
You're up.
Awesome.
See you soon.
Thank you. Awesome. All right. Hello, everyone. Thanks, Erika. Nice to be back here. And I'm super excited for this particular session. I've been doing Power BI for now, almost since it has been introduced. And during this whole process, I learned quite a lot. And thanks for the opportunity for me to, to share what I learned and how I do things and few things I always take care of when I start a project. This is going to be a mix of slides and, of course, some of the practical examples as well. So let's get started. I'm going to share my screen. All right. So share screen and share screen. Erika, let me know when you can see my screen. So you expected to see PowerPoint presentation. You can see it. Erika, you can see my screen, right?
Oh, sorry, I forgot to add myself back to the stream. Yes, I was replying to you.
Awesome.
Yes, we can see your screen.
All right, perfect. Let's get started. All right, so Thanks again. And today's agenda, I will start with an agenda, and it's I put this into four different categories, and basically best practice and top tips, which they usually around 20, 21, 22 tips, or maybe more. I don't know. So I have a sections is the data prep, options and settings in Power BI. What I always do, like data modeling side of things and visualization. Again, I'm not going to go into any DAX codes or any storytelling dashboards and all the stuff, but certain things on the visualization. Just want to make sure that we all are on the same page. Um, Again, about me, briefly, my name is Parvinder Chana or Parv Chana, whatever works for you guys. I run a consulting company here in Vancouver, Canada. You please connect with me on LinkedIn or send an email, any question related to Power BI related technologies. I'm a Microsoft Data Platform MVP, as Erica mentioned, 4 years in MVP. And also a Power BI community super user. Again, I always talk about community. If you have any question on Power BI, it's just like great community forum. Go there, post your questions, and there are tons of people, awesome people who are answering those questions and whatnot. So I learn from community. I like to give back. I whenever I get a chance, I surely go there and answer as many questions as possible. So do reach out on the community, do connect on LinkedIn, whatnot. I'm on Twitter, but not very active. But LinkedIn, that's the place I'm very active. And yeah, so that's a bit about me. Let's dive into it. So data prep. When we talk about the data prep, is like that's where the any BI journey starts. Like you connect to your data, you transfer, you clean your data, and then from there onward you visualize or data model and all this stuff happens. Now there is tons of things which I've seen. The reason why I'm bringing these, it's not like this is all what I do, but these are like a top 5 things what I've listed here, where what I always do, and I've seen when I go into a new client, I've seen they have the Power BI journey, but a lot of things are missing, which are very basic things. And I thought I list those out because that's the first thing I do. It doesn't matter when I start a new project or I'm taking over some other project, and I found what are the missing things there, which if we take care of that from the get-go, that takes us to the next level. So we will look into those things, what those are in a short while. But the first thing is configuration of parameters. What I always do is whenever I'm creating a Power BI, connecting to a data source, whether it's a SQL Server, whether it's a Excel files on a folder, or wherever we are reading the data from, I try to put those common values in parameters and then use in my tables in the queries. For example, I always store like SQL Server in a parameter database name, schema name. So the reason behind that is anytime, let's say if I have 20 tables pointing to one SQL Server, one database, and anytime we want to switch between a database to a different database, or let's say I'm reading an Excel file from a folder, and then I want to switch the folder for whatever reason, I will store the folder in a parameter as in a parameter value, and then use that in my queries. And if I need to switch between the folders, files, or move the computer around or send it to someone else to look at that, and the files are in a different location, rather than going into all those 25 places and making the changes, and you change the value in the parameter and then it propagated to all the queries. I learned it in a harder way. I always have like a fixed values, like connect to each table, connect to the table, and then using it. But then using these parameters, like that's my first thing I do, is like doesn't matter whether I'm connecting to 5 tables, 2 tables on the SQL Server, I create a parameters and then use it. It takes a little bit time to begin with. Like person thinks like, okay, why I'm wasting this time, but it actually pays off later on. So that's like my first recommendation, and I always do. I remove extra columns. Again, I've seen people connect to the tables directly in, let's say, the SQL Server or Excel file, and there's like 30 columns in the table, and they will bring all in. And usually the thought process is, hey, we don't know when we're going to use these columns and whatnot, so maybe in the future. And then eventually it comes up, you never use it. And the reason Why we don't want to keep the extra columns is there's two big things. Is like of course you want the model size to be not a big, because you have the columns in the model which you're never going to use. And second thing is to be a to clutter everything, right? If I always think about is like if the super user is going to connect to the Power BI data set, and they need to connect, they need only to see the information what they're supposed to see, and have a nor like all gazillion columns and which are never getting used. So I always remove extra columns. Is the biggest thing is to make sure that the size of the model stays light and not bloated for no reason. And you always argument is always like, I have 30 columns, I don't know when I'm going to use that, so that's why I'm not removing it. I look in a different way. I always go with, okay, what are the 5 or 6 columns I'm going to use from a table? Let's say I'm connected to a sales table. I need a sales amount, I need a discount, I need a tax, I need a customer key, I need a date, and then there is a sales order number. There is other flags or other information, customer PO and whatnot. Maybe I'm never gonna until I go to a detail level. I don't need to use those columns. I will remove that. But if I get to the point where I really need those columns or get to a situation, then you can easily bring those columns in rather than having 30 columns. Because if you start with the 30 columns and you have like a 15-20 reports developed, now it is very hard to go back and remove those columns because you don't know what you're going to break, where those columns are used. So I begin with the smaller number of columns, and then with time, if there is a need to add another column, I will go back and change the model if required. And then there's an argument why go back and change the model. But at the same time, you want to follow, like, if most of the time what I found is like you bring all these columns but never get used, and they're just sitting there and taking space and whatnot. On the smaller data sets, maybe it doesn't make a big difference, but when you're working with the very large data set, all these things does play a very big role. Column type, that's very important. I've seen like people go connect to the data set, data source or whatever, like Excel file, it auto detect the type, or but you want to make sure the column type is correct, right? You want to make sure because that helps into for example, if you have a just take an example of a customer PO number, right? Because when Power BI, you're connected to the Excel file, when Power BI scans, it scans, I think, first 1,000 rows or to determine the data type, or 100 rows. I don't know what it is, but it detects, okay, like if let's say if the 1,000 rows have a customer PO number with a number value, and this is going to auto detect as a data type as a number, for example. But we know the customer PO number is not necessarily is going to be a number. It can be a text, right? And usually that's where the problem comes, is like when the data get loads and there is a 2,000 rows data file, and let's say the row number 1500 has a customer PO number text, and your data type is detected as a number, and then that's gonna a issue, and the data refresh will fail. So you want to make sure that when it's auto detected the column type, you want to make sure that you actually make sure that the column type is correct. Column names, again, I've seen like people have these column names like cust underscore PO underscore number, or SO number, or AMT as an amount. Like you want to make sure to give the business name. You want to start with like making sure the names of the columns are correct, what the nomenclature the business uses. I'm working on a project right now, and they are connecting to the same table in a SQL in 5 different Power BI reports, and each report has that the same like product is called description in one table. Of course, they don't have a common data set, but like they call description in one table, other table it's called product, other table it's called product underscore name, somewhere it's called the name. So you want to make sure the column names when you're setting on your data, when you're connecting to tables, is what the business uses, what business call it. It's called a product. Do they call it a product name, or like what are the common name get used in the organization or in the business? What the nomenclature is, and create that as a column name to make sure it's a business name. and then use a parameter for test and production data. We will look at an example. Like usually what happens, let's say if you don't have a dev environment and or dev database, and you have only production databases, and then you want to connect to it, and there's, let's say, 5 million rows, and when you're developing and you're testing few things here and there, you don't need to load like all the 5 million rows in your desktop because it takes time to refresh and whatnot, whatever you're doing. So we can create a parameters for testing and load the smaller data set, right? Smaller data to test and experiment everything. And then we can go with the parameters, as you guys know, that you can go in a cloud in Power BI service. When the report is published, you can change the value of the parameters and then let the refresh automatically load the full data instead of loading the the partial data what you're using for the development. So let's look into these things in action, just to quickly walk through what we just talked about. Give me a quick second. I'm going to switch to my Power BI report here. Let's go to transform data. So again, this is a simple Power BI report. I think in previous example, I also, when I did the session, I used the same file. So here is one report I have in front of me, which is reading from Excel file in the location. So what I've done is all the files, if we look into the customers, for example, I have a source. Of course, it is using the data file path, which I call the parameters. So in here, I have used my location where my files are. And if I move the computer around, or if I put the files in a different folder, or I send this report to someone else just who want to play and whatnot, then instead of going to, like, I have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, approximately 9, 10 tables here, which are connected to different Excel files. So I just need to come here and change the parameter value, and then all these reports will switch to the new location. So that's, and usually when I'm working within a SQL environment or other database, so basically any fixed value which is repeating again and again, you want to store that in the parameters and then use that as your in your queries instead of the fixed value. So this is everywhere you will see I'm using data file path and wherever those files are. So that's the first thing. And second thing we talked about is remove extra columns. Again, this is nothing fancy about this. So this is my sales table. So if you look into that, I have a let me actually do the size here. I have a lot of columns in here, maybe 15, 20 columns, extended amount, unit price, discount percentage, blah, 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 like a gazillion of columns. I don't need all those columns, right? New order date, new due date. If I need, I will surely keep it. But to begin with, what I'm report, for example, I'm working on, I'm only need these 5 columns, which is my order date, my due date, customer, product, and sales territory and sales amount. So those are the only columns are required at this point of time when I'm working on the report. But if let's say tomorrow for whatever reason I need a discount, wherever the need comes, I will go back and of course we can have this upfront discussion with the business. Okay, what we're looking for, what and try to bring more logical columns rather than having everything. I've seen like all the time, like I'm not saying it's like but 70%, 80% time I've seen people bring all the columns all the time, and that's a bad idea. You can surely narrow down it to what you think is you needed and the reports you are working on. And then if tomorrow I need a discount amount, like for example, I just need to come here, and instead of removing that from my selection, I just need to add that column. It's a quicker, easy thing to do rather than having everything loaded up front. Other thing we talked about, change type and making sure that all the columns are set correctly. The type, of course, all these are key columns and they are be set as a whole number. And the sales amount, this is what I want to talk about, is like this is I learned it in a harder way. I didn't know much about this thing, but when we set a column like amount or whatnot, we have three, four, two options. Let's talk about. Of course, the whole number is, of course, is a full number without decimal. But then we have two options for decimal number and the fixed decimal number. So basically, the fixed decimal number, a sign is a currency, but that doesn't mean it's a data type of currency type. It's basically your decimal places is fixed to the four digit after that, after decimal. And so what does that do is it reduces the size of your model. It's not like, so if you know that, like, if you're working with the amounts and all the stuff and you're never going beyond four decimal places in your report, or the data, it does not contain more than four decimal places, there's no value of that, change the type of that column to a currency or a fixed decimal number, not currency, but fixed decimal number instead of decimal number. I've seen a lot of the time the column type is left as a decimal number, which we all do. We think it's a decimal number, but having the fixed decimal number is reduces the size of your model. There is a great post, but I'm not going to go too deep into this, but there's a great post. Let me actually see if I can bring that up in front of me here, from Gilbert, our friend from Formu. He has this, I'm going to show this blog post here. He has this article, how I saved 40% on my Power BI data set size. He talked about, like, changing the size. He talked a little more after this, but one of the things his findings are changing the type to fixed decimal number has reduced his model size by 16%. Like here it is. He's talking about from the regular decimal number to the fixed decimal, I have like reduced the 16%. So think about if you have a very large data set and multiple columns with the number, and they all know the having a decimal number and changing it to fixed decimal number, if you don't need go beyond four digit, then your size of the model is going to be much lighter. So that's really something you should pay attention to. And now I always do that and look into data type very closely to make sure that there is no having the keeping a decimal number and not using it. So that's another thing. Again, the column names, for example, in products here, I have the renamed column. So that, let's say in data, this is AdventureWorks Excel file. So the column name is called English product name. That doesn't mean anything. So I change it to product. So I always want to give it a proper name. So I've seen, as I give an example, like there are people connected to the tables. Sometimes the backend tables are, have just a short names and acronyms, kind of AMT, sales underscore AMT, discount is DISC, and all the stuff. So you want to make sure that you are changing your column names correctly in your model. So that's really important. One more thing is like parameter for test and production data. So I created again, that's like I created a parameter called data load, and I have a two option in this one. So just if we quickly look at it. So I have two options, development and production. So by default is development, and right now I have current value is production. So if we look into sales table, usually the fact tables are bigger. So my sales table is, again, this is a sample that I think 67,000 rows or something like that. But let's say if it's a 10 million rows, I don't want to wait, and I'm doing a lot of transformation. Sometimes you have a very bad data and you need to do a lot of transformation, whatnot. I can switch my parameter to the development. And if I go back to sales table, now it has been filtered. I filter, okay, if I'm on a development, just give me the data before 31st December 2010. So now I have only 14 rows. So if I'm in the development phase, I want to test things quickly, I can just quickly use this. And once I publish this file in the cloud, and I can actually in Power BI service change the parameter to production, and then it will load the whole fact table. So you can actually, if you don't have an environment where you have a dev databases with the smaller data set and whatnot, and even the dev databases sometimes is like a replica of production, and tons of rows there and big data set, and you don't want to waste your time in waiting, refreshing, take forever. you can use this kind of technique to load smaller data set, work on it, and then in the cloud, once it is ready, you're happy, and put it in the product cloud, and then change the parameter to production, so load the full data set. So that's on the data prep side. Of course, there's a tons of other things, but these are the things I really pay attention. Other thing which I do is always organize my queries and tables in different folders, and try to be very, very organized that way. This is a very small sample. Like, let's say if I'm working with most of the larger data sets, I work with like 150 tables and 80 tables, 90 tables. Like it's very, very hard if these are not organized correctly. And other thing I usually do, there's no way to sort this by alphabetically. I try to manually sort these things alphabetically. So that's easy if I'm working on, I'm not looking to, if there's a 50 dimensions, for example, and they are not sorted correctly, it's very, very hard. It takes time to do this thing. You make sure that you're putting it together to begin with, but that efforts really pays off when you're doing the maintenance and you need to do anything. Now, if this is alphabetically done, it's very, very easy for me to come back, and if I'm looking something. So those things those are small details, but they really pay off in long run, especially when you're in the maintenance and all the stuff. Other thing I also alphabetically. I also try to keep the column names alphabetically as well, if possible, especially when I'm working with the SQL. Let's say I'm connecting the views in the SQL. In the views, I try to have my columns in the order alphabetically, so that's easy when I'm looking something. But that's not that critical because it doesn't make a lot of difference. But having these in a different groups here and having sorted by alphabetically does pay off in long run if you're working with a very, very large data set. Again, in this one, it doesn't make a difference. It's very few dimensions, few fact tables. But I have a model where there was around three or four fact tables, and there were around 67 different dimensions, 60, 70 different dimensions, and whatnot, other external files and whatnot, a gazillion of things. So I try to be organized. And also I put usually I have a config folder where I have like a parameters in there, some functions, what I'm using, and some other random, tables. Are usually these supposed to be in, anything related to the config, I just put in this folder. So, all right. Any questions so far, Erica, on your end, or we can continue?
Okay. No, I think we have streaming quality questions so far. Yes, and checking questions. But let me just have a quick scroll through. No, I think no. You can continue.
Perfect. All right. So okay, now this is gonna be a small section. The second section, what I'm talking about, the settings. Like on Power BI, we have a different options and settings which you can do. There's a tons of settings, but there are a couple of those which I always do. Turn off date time, auto date time. It's a global setting. Please go ahead and do it right now. And the reason behind that is if this is not turned off, every date, if you guys don't know, or maybe you guys already know, this is highly talked about topic in how to reduce the size of your model. Every date column, if this setting is not turned off, let's say if this is on, every date or column, Power BI create a hidden date table behind the scene from the start of the date, the minimum value in that date column to the maximum value. And let's say if you have we just look in the sales order table, I just brought three date columns in there. And let's say if I have 10 years of a data, it will create those hidden date tables behind the scene. The best practices is like you turn this off. You never want to use those hidden tables behind the scene. You want to bring your own calendar dimension in the model, which we will talk about, and then use that as your central place to connect to your different date columns and whatnot. So go ahead and turn that off. This is a global setting. So once this is turned off, every time you create a new report, it will not auto create the date time. And how all the time, I've seen people using Autodate, the tables, hidden tables created, and they try to create this month to date, year to date, and then they will say this is not working right and whatnot, because they don't know this hidden tables has been created behind the scene is not the right way to approach that. So please turn that off. Turn off auto relationship. There is also a setting for this, is a global setting as well. Usually what happens is when you connect to your sources, Power BI try to detect and create a relationship. And I've seen few times, most of the time it is very smart. It does know what the relationships are. But what happens is sometimes it creates the relationship which are not supposed to be not to be there, and it leads to a wrong result. I've seen many times that that led to a bigger problem, or like you last thing you think about is the relationship. You think, okay, why this is the result is not coming as I'm expecting, and and the reason behind that is sometimes the relationship it creates is not. So every time, even it creates a relationship, you don't turn it off. But when you're bringing the tables in the model, I always go and make sure that the tables are connected correctly and they have a correct relationship. Note the auto relationship has created some weird relationship, and then the results are not coming. We will look into that in a second. And the setting for the cross filtering. So what does this is like? There is a concept of cross filtering, cross highlight, and cross filtering is most commonly used. I have seen, like, on the visualization side, like when you click on a month, and instead of cross highlighting, you want to cross filter other visuals on the same page, or whatever the different visuals on the page. So instead of highlight, people prefer to filter. This setting is not global setting; it's per report based. So you can. I think I don't remember any report where I haven't turned this setting on. Most of the time, people want the cross filter to happen instead of cross highlight. Of course, if we say by default the cross filter, you can always change the interaction between the visuals if you really want to cross highlight. But this is like a global setting across the report. But you can, of course, always, if there is a requirement that you want to cross filter the visuals, cross highlight the video, you can still do it through the edit interactions. Let's look into these things in a little bit in our Power BI report. Let me again switch back to my thing where those are. So first thing I talked about, so these are option settings, and then under options. So there's two sections, of course, global and the current file. And then the global you will find under the data load. So here it is, time intelligence. So auto date time for new files is unchecked. So if I check it every time I start a new report, this is a global setting again. Any date column we have in our tables, it will auto create those hidden tables. Again, this setting is also available on the file basis. Let's say you don't want it to be global, and then you can always, let's say if you want for some reason that auto date timetables to be get created, but in one file you don't want those to be created, you can actually turn it off on a file based as well. But my preference is to, first of all, there will be a reason why you want those internal hidden tables or the date tables to be used. The preference would be every time you start a new project, it should be always turned off. And if there is reason, you can always turn it back on for that specific file. So that's the first thing. You always turn off your auto date time. Actually, I want to show something about this auto date time off quickly. I talked about this in a different session as well a long time ago. So this is again a one Power BI report I have, where I have a sales table, very simple sales table. It has a three date columns: order date, due date, and ship date. And if you see, I have there is a date hierarchy against each table, and the reason why we are seeing this data hierarchy is because the hidden table it has created behind the scene. And I've seen people, the reason they use auto date time, these hidden tables, they said there's a hierarchy and want to use that. And of course, if we turn off auto date time in this specific case, and it will, if I go options and settings, and quickly I go my data load, and auto date time is turned off. So what does this do is it remove that hidden tables. Now the argument usually come out is like, okay, I lost my hierarchy now here, right? And again, as I said, you need a calendar dimension in your model and then use that and create a hierarchy there rather than creating it here. And one other disadvantage here is like not having, that's more of a modeling thing, but we will look into that. Like having the common date dimension, now we can see the orders by, let's say, if I want to analyze how many orders I receive every month, how many orders are due in this month, how many orders we need to ship in this month. I cannot do that right now because these all have their own hierarchies. If there's nothing common in between these three date columns. So if I have my date dimension table, I can produce that kind of result from that. So that's the but right, that's a modeling thing. But from the data size perspective, now if I keep it on, and so I have these three date tables created behind the scene, which will bloat my data model. And uh, so here is the same report. I have a date dimension in here. I've created, and then I have a sales table where the auto date time is turned off. So if we look into our relationship, I have a same table with the three relationship, one active and two inactive. Of course, wherever I want to use inactive relation, I can in DAX, I can use the user relationship function, but I don't want to go in detail. And then I can create the hierarchy here, right? The way I want it to be. I can year, quarter, month, date, and then I can use this in my visualization, as you can see. And now I can control the hierarchy the way I want. I'm on a year level. If I want to drill down into month level or date level, I can do that. So I can create my own hierarchy the way I want it, instead of using that internal hierarchy created by the hidden tables. And the biggest part of this thing is, again, let me show you. The sales table is only what, 60,000 rows with the three date columns, and a very small data set right now. And the turning the auto date time off and node using that and creating our own date dimension. And I analyzed this. I think I shown this in the past as well in my previous speaking engagements. This is where the auto date time. This is through the DAX Studio. I analyzed the model. It's a very simple thing. So auto date time on our database size in this 60,000 column is 2 MB, like in memory the data loaded. And with the off, it's only 493 kilobytes, right? So there's a reduction of 75% in your model. So this is just a date columns with the 60,000 records. Think about a model where you have a millions of rows, tons of date columns, and the auto date, these columns, hidden tables are created behind the scene. How big of an impact that would be on your model if you turn this off. So this is really from the performance point of view, from the better modeling point of view, this is really important. So this is the first thing I do. And a lot of the time when I take on someone else's project, I've seen companies do that, or people who are just starting a Power BI journey, they miss this part. They don't pay attention to this, and because they're not aware of it. But it has a very, very big impact overall in your model and whatnot. So auto relationship, again, I can show in this particular file. If you go in option settings, under options, I think it's in, I always forget where those settings are. Somewhere should be in the report settings. No. Is it a global setting or no? Background data. Interesting. Where is that setting? Probably maybe this is not a global setting. Yeah, that's why. Oh, I thought that's it. So it's in a file where you say relationship, auto detect new relationship after data is loaded. So you turn it off so that it does not auto detect. I have seen because of this, I ran into some issues. I highly recommend to turn this off, and so that it does not, when you load the new table in the model, you are not let it auto detect the relationship. One thing I always do, let's say if I'm working on, I'm going to go back to my original file. Um, if I load another table in the model, and because sometimes like this is a very small model, it's very clear, clean, and everything. Let's say if I create a new table, and usually what I see is like if it has an auto detect on, I want to make sure that I don't know like what relationship it has created. If I show you guys in a, let me actually open up a big model here if I can. Let me give me a quick second here, just show you like this is a small model, but like if we are working in a very large model, what happens there. Let me load that file. Why these things are important, that's what I want to bring up. Browse report, I maybe look into DS1. This is a real-time model for something I'm working on, and it's pretty large in terms of size and in terms of the number of tables in the model. So, oh, okay. So look at all the dimensions, facts, comparatively big. So if we look into the relationship diagram, so they're all over the place, like going left, right, and whatnot. So it's very hard to detect. So when the new tables get loaded, we don't know with the auto detect what it is going to do, because in this whole mess here. Usually, I also do is create a special tab for each fact tables and all the stuff and the dimensions as well, so that I know how they are related. So what I do is when I back to my old file, when I load a new table in the model, what I do is like if it auto detected anything, I bring that table into the whatever table I added. I click on this and say show me add related tables. So it shows me what tables it has connected to. So in case otherwise in that whole list of things where there's tons of things going on, it's very hard to detect. So I load the table, I look, okay, with the auto detect, if it is not turned off, what it has created the relationship with. So maybe unnecessary, unwanted relationship has been created. So I remove it and make sure it's connected correctly. So this is very important from modeling perspective. And cross filtering, again, I'm going to quickly talk about that. Is again, that setting is a per file. It's not a global setting. So that should be under report settings, and change default visual interaction from cross highlighting to cross filtering. By default, Power BI setting is cross highlighting. With this, you can make it cross filtering. So basically, what does it mean is if I click this, all these things are getting filtered instead of cross highlight. But if I really want this visual to cross highlight this, I can still override that with my edit interactions. I can go, okay, I want this to be a cross highlight. So that setting has been changed now. So now if I select any data point here, it is cross highlighting, not filtering now. So usually people prefer filtering instead of highlighting, but again, that global setting you can do. All right, let's get going. So this is what those three things I just talked about. Again, I'm going to quickly breeze through this. The relationship is very important, and usually,
Sorry,
yeah,
sorry. We have one question actually.
go
Quickly.
for it. Yeah.
I'll put this here from Lord Otis. Do you reckon Power BI is powerful data analytics software than Tableau? I guess he means more powerful data analytics software.
Um, I'm a Power BI. I use Tableau. I'm a Power BI person. I'm using it for last 5 6 years. Of course, my answer will be very biased. Of course, I love Power BI the way it is. I'm not saying Tableau is really good in visualization, all that stuff, and Power BI has tons of features as well. From enterprise point of view, I found Power BI more powerful because of the it's a model based a tool. But I'm not because I don't use Tableau enough to give that like answer. There's tons of articles on that. I'm pretty sure you can find that out. But I don't think I'm the right person to answer that question. But I love working with Power BI. What I've seen because the one reason I want to I never seen I got an opportunities to work with the companies who are moving from Tableau to Power BI, right? They've been using Tableau and then switching to Power BI, but I've never came across where the company is using Power BI and they want to switch to Tableau. Of course, they will not come to me because I don't know Tableau, but I haven't heard or seen or in my peers or people I work with that a company was using Power BI and now moving to Tableau. That tells itself the people moving from Tableau to Power BI, there must be reason somebody has like a 400 reports. I know I was talking to a client who has a 400 reports on Tableau, using it for last whatever X number of years, and they're switching to Power BI. It means there's a reason why they're moving to Power BI. So I think that's my answer to your question.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, please carry on.
Yeah. Again, a relationship is very, very critical. This is part of the data model. So we connected to the data, and we brought the data, and data is clean. We brought whatever data we needed. Now the modeling comes in the picture, and this is in the heart of Power BI. And I've seen the poor models. The relationship is all over the place and all the stuff. So this is where you want to pay the attention. This is your make or break. Doesn't matter. Your data is awesome, great, but if your relationship and the data model is not correct, that nothing is going to work. The DAX is going to be the result you're going to expect is not going to come out and whatnot. So this is where you're going to pay the attention. So the first point of that is the relationships. So as we talked about, you want to make sure you have relationship on the correct keys, correct tables. And the second thing you want to make sure you want to avoid the cross filtering relationship, board direction to the relationship. Because that creates ambiguity and then creates more problems. So avoid that, and you want to have a one-to-many or single direction relationship at arrow pointing, not to the both sides. There are reasons why you would do that, but I'm not going to go in details. In this presentation, I have a link to SQL BIs. Those guys have done extensive. Of course, they know better than I know and all that stuff. So they have a detailed explanation of why. What the relationships are and why you shouldn't be using that. I will not be going, but what I want to bring it up is anytime I look into a data model, I come across in Power BI, the first thing I look is like data model. Even before I look at the data, because there's nothing I'm going to make sense out of that. I'm looking into people say, okay, my report is very slow, well, the performance is not working, or I'm not getting the result, or this is not working. So usually it comes down to when the visualization is not working as you expected, or the result you're not getting. Usually you're going to look into the model, and that's what makes me understand how the data is, how the company trying to do things, and what they're trying to do out of this. So the modeling is really, really important, and you really want to pay attention and try to avoid the cross filter direction to board direction, because that can lead to some funny results. So I don't want to go too much in detail because we don't have time for that. That itself is a big detailed topic, but there are articles linked to the articles in my presentation, which you guys can go and read about. And I talked about the date table. We looked at that briefly. Like I always add a date table, and there's none. I've never seen a model where there's no date table unless the model is not working on the date, because every BI is usually something to do with the dates. So always add a date table in your model. And sometimes I've seen people add the date table but don't mark it as a date table, because there's special functionality with the time intelligent functions when your date is marked as a date table. We will see where you can do that. So that's very, very important. You do that. Column categorization. Always make sure that you are you have a geography column, city, state, and your URLs or whatnot. You want to make sure that you set the categorization of the columns. Every time I start a new file, load the data, I make sure that the columns are categorized as they're supposed to be. Summarization of columns, always change that. I've seen like there are key columns in your tables, and they're because they're if they are number columns, their aggregation is set to by default to sum. I make sure the aggregation of all the summarization of those columns has been changed as it's supposed to be. um, let's say the sales order number, you load that, it's a number field, and by default the aggregation for that is a sum. You will never sum the sales order number. Maybe you will do a count on that, so you will change the aggregation to count, not to the sum. So always make sure that you do that. It takes all these things that feels like no value, but in the long run, in a bigger larger data models, they really pay a lot of benefits in terms of maintenance and working through this. Create hierarchies, as I said, in the date table we created our own, like year, whatever the way you want. Like we have a product, let's say product category, subcategory, product. You can create your hierarchies as you want, and then use that where needed. And hide unwanted columns. Let's say the columns we have a relationship on, and those columns are just in the model for the relationship, but they don't have any value. Just hide those columns. Don't, because you want to look at the larger picture. The model you are creating, maybe this is going to be your model which will have a used for the other reports as well, or the self-serve, people are connecting via Excel to that model. You don't want all that columns which are not required in the model. So you always want it to be very clean and unwanted. I always think through is what happens if somebody else connect to this model, what he's supposed to see, and so that they can create their own self reporting from that model. So let's quickly look into these things in action here in my file. I should I want to open this file again. If you look into the table again, I'm going to go back quickly here. So if I go to the sales table, like any table you go to, my product table, let's product key and subcategory keys are the key columns. They are just for the relationship purpose, doesn't have any value. So I hide those columns. The only columns which are visible is product and color, which I might use. Similarly, in geography, I have a country column. So here is what I made sure that I'm changing. If I go to country, that I have changed the data category of this to whatever is the supposed to be. By default, it's uncategorized, but you want to make sure that you have given this data category as well. And hiding all the columns, like where I don't need these. I think this is a geography key column. I don't need it. I hid it. And then I created a hierarchy, because let's say if I want to use from country to state, if this is always going to be the case, I will probably hide these columns as well. I will just always have the country hierarchy, and then we can drill up and down. So you can create your own. In the relationship, I quickly mentioned about the last thing you want to do is like your cross filter direction is to both, and that can lead to a ambiguity and bigger problem in your results. So most of the time you want to avoid, and there are reasons when you will use it, but I don't want to go into that. But the first thought process for when I look at the model, when I see the cross filter direction going all over the places, that's like the first thing is like, okay, fix that and see what happens and go from there. So I think that's pretty much on the modeling side of things, and I really pay attention to. So basically, summarization of the columns. One thing I want to make sure we understand, that you can select when you are trying to hide the columns here. You cannot multi-select in the relationship view. You can multi-select the columns, and you can make these settings on the multiple columns at the same time. Whereas if you're in these views, you cannot multi-select and one. So usually when I create a new model, I come here and go through this process to make sure this global hidden, whatever I need to hide, change the summarization. For example, sales amount is always sum and whatnot. So I make sure that has been done here. And the reason I do in a relationship diagram, because I can multi-select and do the settings in one go, is much quicker. And all right. Let's go back to our presentation here. So quickly, So visualization, create theme files. I always create a theme file. Like when I go to a company and start a new project, I whatever their color schemes is, talk to their marketing and whatnot. I create a theme file and I use that. And there's a tons of options available. Don't want to go into that. But the first thing I do is always make sure the color schema has been in the Power BI report has been done based on create a theme file for them, and that is get used so that the look and feel in all the reports is the same. And once the theme file is done, I create a template. I always start with a template and then never create like a new report and then load the theme file. Once the theme is correct done and we are all agreed upon, I create a template and use that template all the time. um, Always use explicit measures. What does that means is, like, we have a sales amount table, we drop it, drag and drop into in any visualization, it aggregates based on the aggregation given on that. Let's say it's a sales PO number, we change the summarization to count. As soon as we drop it on that is on the canvas, it will count the number of rows on that column. So I never always use the implicit measures instead of explicit measures instead of. Always create a measure and use that in visualization, because then you can cascade measures, right? You can let's say if sales amount has a condition for is sales amount is sum of sales amount, and now you want to see a sales amount of active products only, so you will create another measure. You say use your existing summarize sum sales amount measure in that, and they say product is active is equal to 1 or not, whatever you want. So so basically once you change the logic in one place, or whatever the business rule changes, it flows through. So I've seen the files where people drag and drop those columns directly into the visualization and not reuse the measures again and again, and then that's just a too much work in maintenance and whatnot, especially when the business logic changes. Now, folder for measures, I usually put my measures in one folder and put it in there. One thing on the reason is they all in the same place doesn't make a big difference, but for again from the working point of view, it's easier to when you work with, because sometimes you're working with the models. We have like hundreds and hundreds of measures in there, so they're all over. If they're all over the place, it's very hard to maintain, and if they're organized in the folders, it become very easy. Hide visual headers for slice. I seen like all there the visual headers where it shows all different icons on each visual. Usually on the slicer, text boxes, buttons, and all the stuff, I turn those hide visual headers off because there's no value, and so it just take for a reason it just take a annoying thing to show up those icons on the visuals like these specifically I mentioned out here, because they are not doing anything for us. And one thing I want to say, avoid visual level filters. I've seen people put a visual level. There are reasons that you need to put a visual level filters, but sometimes I've seen, like I was working on a project where they had two visuals on the report. One was filtered on the visual level filter they applied, but the other one not, and the results were not matching, and it was confusing, like what happens. So what turned out to be there was a visual level filter. Of course, there's the chances that you will do it, but you want to avoid that if possible. So let's quickly look into. So for theme files, there's a few links which usually what I do here is like if I'm working on another project. So there's this website. It tells you give a URL and it picks a color. Let's say if the company doesn't have anything, you go to this website and you can grab. Let's say if I go to my own company. So what it does, it scans your site and it brings a color code from there. So from there you can create the theme file. Like, so this is what it is being used. You can remove it out. So we have the hex codes from here. And usually the companies, bigger companies, the marketing department, they have their color schema and they give you the codes. But if you don't, I usually go grab the color code from the website because that's what their look and feel is, and then use this in my theme file. And of course, there's other if you other websites as well, which allows you to create these whatever the colors you want. Oh boy. For example, you can create the colors from pictures as well. So you have an image, you like, let's say this created this palette, and then you can use this or whatever, right? So you can create the color from the image as well, and it creates your hex code and all that stuff. There's tons of stuff available. I'm not a graphic designer by nature, but I usually use these techniques to create the theme file to begin with, so that I have a consistent look and feel in all the reports for that organization. And once this is done, so template file, I think I have one here, which I always use for my own demos. So if I wish quickly show, let's go to my blog. So whenever I start blogging, I start a new Power BI file. So I have this template I created. So it when I open this template file, it has all the look and feel what I wanted my sample data files to be. So it has the basic things done in this. So it has the theme in it. It has the footer. I have a title in there as well. And I have also data files path where I'm going to load the data from. Again, you can create those. So I loaded the calendar file in here. This file I've created as a sample data as well. So it's always load the data. Let's say if I'm writing a new blog, I always start with this file, and it has a consistent look and feel. And come on. So yeah, it's always come with my logo, the title, what I just gave, and then it footer, whatever. So all my files are like this, and data is loaded. So the theme file has been created. Now the template has been created, and start from there. So that's pretty much what I do. So it becomes very, very easy afterwards to work with on the reporting side of things. Mayas again, folder for Mayas. I don't want to go too deep, but let me quickly show the largest data model file I have. So think about that. There's all these Mayas has been in different folders. If I go to my reporting Mayas, then under that there's a subfolders, which is claims and all the stuff. So if I'm working on commission stuff, I know where to go for. So it's very, very easy to work with these kind of things. So I always recommend to put the Mayas in your folder. So because they grow much faster, you realize, and then it becomes very, very ugly to manage that. Again, in this I have all these links, and which is I talked about. I can share this file later on with Erica, and then she can post it, and then you guys can read and all the stuff here. I think that's pretty much it. Yeah, please, if you can scan this barcode and send me some feedback, how you like this session, what do you think, what thing I should have added more, or their feedback or anything, please do appreciate your feedback. And thanks for joining me, and I hope you learned something from today. And these are things I always do that looks quite a lot. They are small, simple things. For smaller files, smaller data set, it does not make a difference. We're experimenting something, doesn't matter. But as soon as you're going to start within a enterprise solution for a company, multiple reports, multiple things, you always wanted to follow these steps, and they take you to the next level. And they really, really help in the later stages when you're working with the larger data sets and many, many reports. Thank you. Thanks, Erica.
Thank you so much. We actually have one question. Let's see what. Why does visualization feels more like artists who is trying to showcase their art to the management? I guess this is quite of a sarcastic question.
Yeah. They always say it's a storytelling, right?
Yeah.
It's storytelling of data.
Yeah. So you don't make it boring. That's it, right?
Totally.
Colors are not boring. You just liven it up with it.
Yeah, if we look that way, otherwise BI is in place. Like people can have the Excel sheet and rows of data and the columns and the paginated reports and whatnot. But right, you want to highlight the data, so the business can make a smart decision based on whatever is important to the business, and you want to present in a way because there is a reason why companies has this marketing team and the themes of the colors and all that stuff, right? Why if the company uses the green color and then you start creating the reports with the pink color, all of a sudden it does not resonate with the organization. That's a simple thing, but it does go a long way, and it's a sense of ownership as well. What I've seen is one of the things, like when I create the templates, when I create these themes file, every report look the same. people, it's easy for them to follow, right? If you create 5 reports today and the sixth report, the look and feel is completely different, they sometimes get lost. It's a big thing. And if you have a standard look and feel, standard color scheme, where the slicers are, where the KPIs are, where the visualizations are, and how they are, the adoptability of these reports, because then people start, okay, this is where the slicer is going to be, this is where I'm going to see these things. And I've seen, because of those basic things get done, the adoptability of the reports is much higher, because people don't have to, okay, one report look in a different way and the other one look in a different way, and then they have to retrain themselves. So those things are really important in adoptability point of view as well.
Thank you. Thank you for taking a deeper answer on that. Thank you so much. We have one more question from Joao. I hope I am I am pronouncing it right. How much data does Power BI support using different licenses?
How much Power BI data set? How much
How much data does Power BI support using different licenses?
Oh, that's a pretty so the data it with the Power BI Pro license 1 gig. Again, when I say 1 gig, it means it's a highly compressed data when it is in a memory, right? I've seen a very large data set get fit into 1 gig. This is where the what we talked about, like tearing off those Autodate time, remove that, your data shrink, your column data type set correctly, your data size shrink. And taking those steps are very important, because then your data is really smaller in terms of size and the performance as well. So if you hit the 1 gig limit, the PPU, the next licensing, which has been introduced for a few months ago, a entry level kind of premium capacity that support 100 gig of data, which is very large when you think through with the compression and all that stuff. So I had never seen. I know there is examples of the terabyte and whatnot, and but in my experience, I worked with the very large data set. What I'm working on, I show you the data model, which is around 400 million rows. The data set is around 4 gig right now, and we are using premium capacity, and for other reasons, not because of the data set, but so it's a highly compressed data set. So, if you're really working with a very large data set and you're running into an issue, yeah, please feel free to connect with me and shoot me an email or LinkedIn or whatever works for you, and then I can talk more in detail about that.
I love hearing that when our MVPs are just like so generous and just really want to help everybody, but with whatever. So yes, please guys, really, if you have any questions, just do connect with Parvinder, and I am sure he will be more than happy to help you.
Totally.
Yeah, we have a few comments here saying that, yeah, thank you and very useful tips. We have a Salesforce question. I don't know if that's anywhat relevant, but let's see. What do you reckon about Salesforce Einstein analytics? Does it have a chance to flourish in the future due to the ease of access?
Yeah, that's awesome. It's funny, the Salesforce. I've been a Salesforce admin before I full-fledged jumped into. I was working with the organization, and I was a Salesforce. I know Salesforce inside out, but not doing it anymore. And that is the time when Salesforce introduced Einstein, and I attended a local Vancouver company. I'm forgetting the name of those guys, and they have a Salesforce people came in and showed the Einstein at that time. That's the only thing I'd seen about that product, and that was in a very early stages. I'm talking about back in 2015, 2016, if I'm not wrong. Around that time, I think that was the time when they were bringing that in before they got the Tableau. But I don't have any further knowledge on that particular topic specifically, unfortunately. But I'd surely seen it in early days. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And then let's be quite, what's the word? When you are, being, oh my God, I'm getting a brain freeze. When you are being cautious of the time. Yes, cautious. But we have one more question here. Can we use parameters for setting incremental data refreshes?
Yes, there is a whole big topic on incremental refresh. Yeah, there is a range start and range and topic. There's a specific parameters which you can use. Yes, 100% you can use that, and we use it all the time. There's a lot of articles on that. So again, if you are uh, don't know where to go and look for it and how to do it, yeah, please feel free to reach out. And I have done it many times where one of my client is actually we implemented recently all the incremental refresh and all the stuff is because their data uh, set is data is growing much faster. We started with the whole import thing, and for 6 months that was fine, and then we started with the incremental refresh and using parameters and whatnot. So yeah, please reach out. Yeah, you can do that.
Yeah.
The answer is yes.
Yes, great. Thank you. So yeah, Yao, just reach out to Parvinder and he will be help you.
Anytime.
Yes. I don't think we have any more questions right now. So I think it's a wrap.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much for being here with us again today. It was really great. We have only 2 more sessions left from this series, so it's not that many. 2 more Wednesdays, and then I will have free Wednesdays again. No, just kidding. But yes, I hope to see you again and in the future with other Power BI events. And yeah, have a
Anytime.
great day.
Always a
And
pleasure.
yeah, to everybody, thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Bye now.
Bye.